All right. Well, Eric, thanks so much for joining us today. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a lot of people here really excited about this talk, and the illustration department is thrilled to introduce Eric Wilkerson. So Eric has been in the illustration industry for 20 years while working as a freelance illustrator and an in-house artist. You can find his work on and in everything from young adult novels to visual development, asset design for games, to gallery work. Working in both digitally and oils, his work encompasses expression in brushstrokes, evoking mood, and expert visual storytelling. In addition to creating award-winning pieces of art, he has also taught at Syracuse University, the School of Visual Arts in New York, and is currently a mentor for CG Spectrum. And some of his clients that we're all familiar with are Dark Horse Comics, Wizards of the Coast, Disney, Marvel, Scholastic, Nickelodeon, Random House, Tops, and Upper Deck, to name a few. So let's give a big, warm virtual welcome to Eric. I guess that would be this.
Oh, emojis. That's how we're doing it.
Perfect. Perfect.
Right on.
So okay. Eric, go ahead and take it over.
All right. So hello, everyone. Hey, I don't know how to do the emoji wave, but that's cool. So I'm going to start off by giving you a little history, a little brief story about my path as an illustrator, and what semesters, not semesters, but what do we have? Juniors, seniors? What is this comprised of?
So I have seniors, but right now you're talking to seniors, sophomores, juniors, probably. I'm guessing there's a few freshmen in there, and they're like, okay, peppered around, and all different majors as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, so welcome everyone. And I just wanted to say that each of your paths as an illustrator, graphic designer, 3D modeler, whatever it is that your major is at in school right now, is going to be different from your classmate. I came out of school wanting to do one thing and one thing only, very specific idea in my head, and that spread out and branched off into a bunch of different paths based on my interests. So I'm just going to talk about how I got my start, and you might hear yourself in my story, only with probably less traditional mediums. I don't know, but all right. So let me share my screen here. All right, you can see my screen? All right. I'll pull up the chat. Junior designers, all right. Okay. Traditional influences. So from 1986 to 2000, I knew where I was every single Saturday night, and I was home watching Star Trek. My father introduced me to Star Trek when I was 9 years old, when we went to see Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. I didn't know what it was. I never knew about the original show, hadn't seen any of the other movies. This was my introduction. And this movie blew my mind in a way that like none of the Star Wars films had ever done. And I was absolutely in love with science fiction from that point forward. And then a year later, this hit the airwaves. So yeah, I knew where I was every Saturday night for over a decade, home watching Star Trek. Don't call my house. I'm not going to the mall to hang out. Nothing. Don't call me on a Saturday night. That was the rule. There was no pause, there was no binging, there was no Netflix. It didn't exist. If you missed the episode, you missed it. So um, that was my introduction to science fiction. And then when I started learning how to draw, I was really copying the work that I saw around me. And I was introduced to the work of an illustrator and comic book artist named Whilce Portacio back during his run on X-Men. And then that led me to the work of Jim Lee. And I followed their careers from their time working for Marvel Comics to the foundation of Image Comics, and spent a large amount of my time alone in my bedroom copying the work of Jim Lee and the styles of like trying to mash together the work of Whilce, Rob Liefeld, and Jim Lee into some kind of little student portfolio back before college. I was also introduced to the work of Sid Mead in my foundation year of art school, and then found out that this is the same guy that designed for Tron, Aliens, the vehicles and environments for a number of different films, including Blade Runner. So this emergency vehicle is the same battle tank that Ripley is driving in the movie Aliens. Now, I realize when I say this because I talk about old films to my students and it's crickets. Like they have no idea if it's not before like 1999, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's a really good film. I highly recommend you see it. But then came anime. I was introduced to anime in high school, Akira and different things like that. But it was the work of an illustrator named Sadamoto Yoshiyuki, one of the chief character designers for Neon Genesis Evangelion, that kind of cemented what I wanted to do with costume design, or just stylistically what I would like to achieve with some of my sci-fi work. I was really in love with everything that was being produced by Gainax Entertainment back in the early 90s. So this is the work of Masamune Shirow. This is the creator of anime or manga like Appleseed and Ghost in the Shell, things like that got turned into blockbuster movies and animated series and things like that. So this was kind of my go-to guy when I was a teenager for learning how to draw robots and all kinds of tech stuff. It was really, really a masterclass studying, like combining his work. I kind of put everybody into a little bottle, right? Whilce, a little bit of Jim Lee, a little bit of Whilce, all my anime influences, and kind of like shook them up in a bottle and tried to pick and choose what I liked from each of them and what I could add into my own thing to kind of create a style for myself. This is the work of an illustrator, sci-fi illustrator named Chris Foss. And if you're not familiar with Chris Foss's work, you might be familiar with the visuals inspired by Chris Foss's work in the most recent Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I remember being in the movie theater watching those movies, especially toward the end of part one and throughout all of part two, thinking, oh my God, I hope Chris Foss has a lawyer, or they asked him permission, or please tell me he was working on this film, because oh my God, this is just such a ripoff. And thankfully I was very happy to see that the director of the film was a big Chris Foss fan, and there's an acknowledgement of Chris Foss's work and contribution to the creation of those films, to the design of those films. But yeah, this is done for, I think, one of the Dune this is concept art for one of the Dune movies. So this is the work. I hope that you guys know whose work this is, but if you don't, this is the work of N.C. Wyeth. So N.C. Wyeth is one of the is a golden age illustrator, and his work has been highly influential for so many fantasy illustrators. His understanding of light, color, shadow, mood, storytelling, it's all there. It's all there. And if you ever get a chance, I mean, you guys are in Pennsylvania, so there's like no excuse for any of you to not have been to his house and wandered around and all that stuff. So yeah, it'd be embarrassing if you didn't know who he is. So anyway, this is the work of an Orientalist painter named Jean-Léon Gérôme. When it came to the level of rendering that I wanted to apply to my work when I was in college, this is the guy that I said, okay, I didn't know people were rendering or painting like this before a certain time period, because I was looking at the work of impressionists like, you know, Sargent and other realist fine artists. But as far as illustration went, my introduction to that, as far as the level of rendering people were putting into their stuff, was like Boris Vallejo and you know, like Michael Whalen. But I wasn't aware that there were people out there throwing this kind of level of finish into their work, you know, before sci-fi publishing was a thing. This is a beautiful painting. It's not really that big, actually. These characters are tiny, but it's an exquisite piece. And if you ever get a chance to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it's over in the realist, 19th century realist art wing. So I studied at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. And when I came into SVA, I was using color pencils and watercolor for all of my work, all of my samples. This is what I was doing in high school. And I was in my second year of school, kind of trying to figure out where my path was gonna go. Like, what style should I have? I know students get really caught up with style, the word style, and they don't even know themselves or what they want to paint, but they're so obsessed with style. I got to have a style. Well, technically, you should probably learn how to use the mediums first before you worry about style. But I was obsessed with trying to figure out a look for all of my illustration assignments. And every year, the school would be, the Society of Illustrators would donate extra copies of the previous year's annual competition, annual art book to the school. So every illustration major got a copy of this book every year. So I discovered the work of Carter Goodrich. And if you're not familiar with the work of Carter Goodrich, he is an editorial illustrator and cartoonist and character designer for films like Hunchback of Notre Dame, like Ice Age, a number of different Disney films. But this is color pencil and watercolor. And there's other guys like C.F. Payne that are use color pencil and watercolor and are gouache to great effect. And you really can't tell that sometimes you really can't tell that you're looking at a color pencil piece. But after about half a semester of doing all of these color pencil and watercolor pieces for class, one of my other classmates came into class with this fully rendered oil painting as an assignment, and she just put us all to shame. And I know, like, there's somebody listening to this that is in a class or sees the art of their peers in class and goes, "Oh my God!" Like, that is so out of my league. I don't even know if I belong in this class. This is amazing. Their work is amazing, and I'm nothing. Like that anxiety, that imposter syndrome, that fear, that whatever you want to call it, sneaks up, and you feel like you don't belong. That's the feeling I had after seeing that student's work. So I asked her, where did you learn how to do that? And she said that she studied with this man, Marvin Madelson. And Marvin is a, I guess, fifth, sixth generation Frank Riley student. And I don't know, I'll explain what that means in a second. One of my other instructors was a man named Garen Baker, who was a book cover illustrator and muralist. Does a lot of public art now. And this guy, his name is Donato Giancola, is like probably the best contemporary sci-fi fantasy illustrator alive. Every word that came out of that man's mouth, I wrote down. The class was so good, I took it twice. And in the second time around, I remember him looking at me and saying, you know, Eric, when you graduate, I'm your direct competition. I thought, oh my God. You're in your senior year. You don't expect your teacher to lean in and go, you're not going to get the work because I'm going to push you aside. I'm the man, I'm the competition. Like, good luck. You don't expect that. But he wasn't mean about it. He just was like, matter of fact, you know, if you want this, you got to put in work. You got to work hard, because it's me, it's Michael Whalen, it's Boris, it's all these people that came before that the art director is going to choose first. All right. So this is the palette that Marvin taught in our class. So we had, let's see if I can get my cursor. Can you see my cursor? All right. So we were taught to paint by pre-mixing our values of gray from light to dark into numeric structure that was taught at the Art Students League in the 1950s and just passed on generation after generation by the students of Frank Riley. So this Riley method guarantees that you have a controlled palette and that you understand what values and what colors are going to be used to pre-mix your flesh tones or whatever it is that you want to paint for your illustration. So that's how I learned how to paint. And after 6 months in his class, after having really never been able to control or understand oil painting, I did this. And it still holds up as probably one of my most solid oil paintings to this day. I actually got Avery Brooks to sign it, which was just still jazz hands. It's like the highlight of my life, that to show him this painting at a convention and get his autograph was like, oh my God. But I had a lot of fun painting this. This is October of '99. So yeah, anyway. So for my senior project, coming out of before I left SVA, I wanted to do a piece that kind of was the culmination of everything I learned at the school, or everything I learned from Marvin. And I showed him this sketch that I wanted to do for a woman sitting in the cockpit of a giant robot. So this piece is inspired by all of that anime influence, all of that character designer influence from Evangelion and all that stuff. But I showed him the sketch and he said, well, how are you going to make this? I said, oh, well, I'll just make it up. I'll just figure it out. And he said to me, imagine how much better this painting would look if you knew how light hit the form. So you're going to have to build this robot. And I said, well, how do I do that? I don't because I'm thinking maybe like a cardboard box or something like that, take it outside. He said, just go to Home Depot. And so I went to Home Depot and I got a sheet of aluminum sheet metal. I wrapped it up and I got some tubes and some aluminum foil. And I built a 4-foot tall model, a robot in my bedroom. And I used my mom's salad bowl there as the top of the head. And the salad bowl's removable so that I could drop a lamp down into the chest cavity, which would illuminate the cockpit of the maquette. Now this is winter of '99. There were no blogs. There were no, Instagrams or nothing like that. Nobody knew how James Gurney did anything. All right. He was still right in the middle of making those Dinotopia books. And there was no, chronicle of that. So I was just winging it. But a lot of Marvin's students, more specifically the students that ended up becoming sci-fi fantasy illustrators like Dorian Vallejo and others, would sculpt their reference. If you needed an alien, you got some clay and you sculpted that alien and you lit it, and so you understood how light and shadow hit that form. So that was the final painting that I did based on that reference. And this was also the first piece that I got into Spectrum, which is the best of annual competition, best sci-fi fantasy art of the year annual book. And that's me with a luxurious full head of hair painting that piece way back then. No digital color sketches. All that stuff had to be worked out in gray tone and color, oil sketches that you see at the bottom there. And all of my reference with the cockpit illuminated and all that stuff. So it was a fun piece to work on, and I learned a lot from doing that piece. So after college, my portfolio wasn't where I wanted it to be. Now, there's two schools of thought. You can figure out what it is you want to do, and you can triple down and make sure that you are amazing at doing that one thing before you leave college, or you can have a backup plan. Learn what you have to learn, but go study some other things just in case your plan A doesn't work out the way you expected. So before I left college, I had sample portfolio for editorial, advertising, storyboards, book cover, sci-fi book cover illustration, and concept art. So I was kind of all over the place, but thank God I was, because it ended up coming full circle later on in life. But when I was working in advertising, I was doing work for a company that did TV animatics for TV commercials. And we were using a program that at the time was like a big deal called Adobe Flash. And this is typically what you would think of when you think of vector illustration, something flat and graphic. And in Adobe Flash, we were doing like realist portraiture and character design and animation in a vector program. And all of our stuff looked like this for the animatics. And to give you an example of how much money goes into this stuff, like if you see a car commercial where the new Mazda or whatever is driving down an empty street, they have closed off that street. So they're paying thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a day to close off a city street, a block, 2 blocks of a city street, getting actors, drivers, all these people. The director alone is getting $100,000 a day. All right. So if a company can see what that commercial is going to look like in an animatic stage and as a cartoon for 5 figures, they're going to spend that first to see if their idea is stupid or not before they go spending like $1 million on a commercial. So I did this for a few years while trying to build up my portfolio for what I really wanted to do. So this is another example of that. So I was usually on heads, which were then animated, and then somebody else was drawing the bodies, and all that stuff would be stitched together and then sent to the animation studio in Israel. So it was more like a 24-hour service that we were providing to churn out animatics for. This was for a Reese's peanut butter commercial, peanut butter cup commercial. So we did likenesses and all that stuff, storyboards. Then I got into doing product illustration. Since I already knew how to do vector graphic styles, this is another thing that I stumbled into where somebody was looking for, or the company was looking for an illustrator, and I was able to say, yeah, I can do that. So you'll find that as you're trying to figure out what you want to do in your career, or while you're waiting for that perfect opportunity to arise, it would make sense to at least try to apply for stuff that you never know if you might like. I mean, it beats working at Walmart until that you get that big break, right? These were really good paying jobs, staff positions that I had. Some of those jobs I hated, honestly, but they paid for my car, they paid for my livelihood, and I was able to say after I graduated from college, see ma, see dad, you didn't waste your money. And that was a big deal for me because, you know, I didn't come from money where I could just say, after 4 years of college, after 4 years of art school, I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to be a real estate agent or something. And it wouldn't make sense to me. My father would be pissed if I said, after 4 years of him shelling out money, well, actually, I wasn't really going to do that. I just wanted to go to school for 4 years and draw. There's so many people that do that. I don't understand it. But anyway. So this led to doing work for environment design work for children's hospitals. So this is for a hospital in Chicago. I never saw what the actual room looked like after it was built, but this is one of the designs that we threw together for like the children's hospital lobby and some of the playrooms and waiting rooms and stuff like that. But it all had to be very clean and polished. It couldn't be the sloppy Photoshop sketches that you typically see. So digital painting. What I talked about with the Riley method and pre-mixing the colors and all that stuff, when it came to trying to transition that understanding of how to paint digitally the same way I painted in oils, had tried to mimic what I could do in oil paint in Photoshop, I didn't know where to start. So I just made a value chart and figured out a way to blend my colors, the foreground and background colors, into each other so that I could have a nice transition, a nice gradient transition with those colors. And I made the entire color wheel, as you can see, my reds, my blues, my purples, my yellows. And those all correspond to the same numeric values of gray in this gray bar that you see here. So that was how I taught myself to paint digitally, and then was able to produce samples or book cover illustrations like this. This was one of the first that I did for Science Fiction Book Club. And I remember getting the call from the art director. I remember him specifically calling me and asking me if I was available. And I was so excited, and I thought, I've got to home run this. This has got to be like spot on. And like later on in the year, the movie Ender's Game, this is for a collection of the first 2 books in the Ender's Game series by Orson Scott Card. So I knew that the movie was going to be coming out later on that summer, and I hadn't seen any images for it, but I wanted to try my own take at designing the armor, or the body, the war room, or whatever, the battle room armor for this kid, and what the rest of the space station, the background of the space station might look like. I had a blast doing stuff like this. So that one thing led to another, and I ended up picking up more and more of what I actually wanted to do. And this was really satisfying to get these calls or get these emails, saying, "Hey, I saw your work. Are you available?" I was dabbling in science fiction. I was dabbling in paranormal romance for a while. I kind of got tired of the guys or the ladies with the glowing magic fists and stuff like that, but it seems like every cover is that. But anyway, so this is what I eventually merged into, which is what I wanted to do when I came out of school, but I wasn't ready to do that professionally in oils in 2000. So it took about 13 years of me bouncing back and forth between advertising and concept design and different things. But I learned so much along the way that I could then apply to my book cover art. Because if I didn't have that background in concept art and concept character design, I wouldn't be able to really dive into it when it came to doing a sci-fi or fantasy illustration. So matte painting is something that I also stumbled into because a friend of mine that was Donato's studio assistant became a matte painter at DreamWorks Animation. And he was doing some side freelance work. And he knew that I was on low times and wasn't getting much work. And he was tired of doing some matte painting, some freelance matte painting work, because he was getting busy with whatever projects at DreamWorks. And he just passed on a client to me and said, well, here's how to do it. They give you a 3D block model like this, and you just have to photo bash and just do some light digital painting over it to create a finished matte painting for like architectural companies. So I took something like that and turned it into this. And while working with matte painting, doing matte paintings for different companies or documentaries and things like that, I would do little digital studies inspired by Hudson River School artists like Frederick Church and I can't remember the other guy's name, but that would lead to a piece like this. And the animators would like pepper the ground in here with dinosaurs and like animals flying in the sky and a waterfall like coming over this mountain, and all that stuff was added later in like After Effects. But this is the digital plate, the matte plate that they needed. So then, based off of my experience with concept design and sci-fi illustration, I ended up stumbling into costume design. There was a company years ago that was trying to put together a stage show for robots, like a band of performing musical robots. And this was my job for 4 years. I was just designing characters, props, front and back designs, 3/4 views, close-ups of faces and other kinds of body parts. But this was another experience where I had to learn on the job, because with a lot of concept art, especially for video games, there isn't any consideration to real world physics sometimes, because you see characters wielding these gigantic axes and swords and things like that, and you say, well, there's no physical way you're going to hold that. But I had to design this around a real person being inside this costume. They had to be able to walk, they had to be able to sit, cross their arms, and breathe in the design. So this project gave me the opportunity to work alongside Weta Workshop and some other studios that would be tasked with fabricating this design. The show ultimately didn't come out, but I got paid. That's the other downside of concept art, is where you could do something for years and you could be so in love with it and think, oh man, this is going to be so great when it comes out. I can't wait to play this game or see this movie when it comes out, because we put so much love into the design. And then the studio can just cancel it. And they own everything you did. So it's their choice whether or not you can show it or not. But the one upside to this project was that I had a full circle moment where I got to work alongside this man. His name is Andrew Probert. Now, if you're not familiar with the name, you might know his work, because he was the concept designer for Star Trek: The Next Generation. He designed the ship, the exterior, the interiors, the Ferengi, like a lot of the alien species that were established in the first season of that show were all this guy. The pads that were the inspiration for the iPad, this dude. So it was just an amazing experience for me to be able to listen to him talk about his time working alongside Gene Roddenberry and designing for Star Trek. So we ended up designing costumes for the Blue Man Group. They wanted an update for their costumes for their band. So we took something like this, and then I gave a lot of these different tribal patterns to the work. And, this is what they ended up coming up with for that. So I went from advertising, matte painting, character design, storyboards, costume design, bouncing from one thing to the next. But each of these experiences taught me something that I could apply to my illustration work. Dipping into different cultures for inspiration for concept art, for designs was a big deal. So after that experience, somehow somebody found out that I knew how to design robots for stage shows. One second, I'm sorry. I've got a jet engine HVAC unit behind me that's about to kick on. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, hopefully everybody. All right, great. So this was a show called Rock in Rio. They were going to be doing a concert in Las Vegas in, what was it, 2015, I think? 2014, 2015. And they wanted a mascot for the show to be walking around, like high-fiving the crowd and like playing music. So their original design, what they gave me as an inspiration, was this robot that had like guitars strapped to its legs, speakers on its shoulders and all that stuff. And I'm looking at this design and I'm thinking, that's just Megatron with guitars strapped to it. Like, that's illegal. Like, I'm not gonna just update that. I'm gonna give you something hopefully better. So from my time working with Weta, I was aware of these leg stilts that they used for District 9, and ways that you could augment and uh, hide a performer in a costume. So this is another example of that. So I designed what became this rough image, and I also worked out different like head designs, dipping into like different cultural patterns, and also um, like different uh, like headphones and headsets and things like that, designing the speakers and all that into the body. But all of this stuff had to be functional. So that's what the final design looked like for that mascot. And so if we were to look at this, you ask yourself, okay, so where's the performer in here? Their arms are here. So their hands come through here and kind of squeeze these little joysticks that cause these hands, these claw grips to squeeze. And their head is here. So if you've ever been on a city bus that has like that new NBC sitcom wallpaper plastered on the outside of the bus, you can see out, but you can't see in. It's the same effect, right? It's like a tinted uh, fiberglass material, right? So there was airflow. There's these fans here um, were for airflow, and also there's speakers built in. There's airflow through the chest here, and there's all this stuff had to be thought out. So it just couldn't be make a cool design. It had to be make a cool design that is not only cool but functional. So that's that's another level that some people don't have to think about if they're not doing something for stage or for theater or something like that. And finally, sculpture. So I still remembering what my teacher Marvin Madelson said. Imagine how much better that image would look, that painting would look, if you knew how light and shadow hit the form. So I, at this point, knew that there are a number of illustrators, following along with what like movie concept sculptors and James Gurney and other people are like creating maquettes for their art. And I thought, well, I want to make a maquette that I could use multiple times, not something that's going to be a quick throwaway blobs of clay just for light. I want to really take my time and do something nice. I would play with the textures and paint it up and have something that I could do a close-up portrait of, or a full body shot. And that became the reference for a really large painting that I did a while ago. So that is me. So I'm going to show you a little demo reel, and then I will open it up to questions if anybody has anything that they would like to ask. All right. And Christina, just give me a thumbs up if you cannot hear this. No? Oh, boo. 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 All right, so hold on a second. Let me take this headset out. No? Nothing? No? Ah, boo.
We can hear a little bit, but I think we hear your heater more so.
It's the HVAC. Cursed HVAC. Well, just imagine it's like really cool slideshowy and it's got some beats to it. Oh man, that's disappointing. I don't know how to, let's see.
I don't think there's anything on Zoom that I can.
No, I'm going to turn off my, if I turn.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just thinking, same as system speaker. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We don't need the demo reel. We can just go right into any kind of questions or anything somebody might have.
So somebody just mentioned it, that if you share your entire desktop versus a window, it might work.
How do you do that? Share desktop. I think I was doing that. Screen one. I think I was doing that.
If you stop sharing and then reshare, and the option is to share a document or the entire desktop, you would select the entire
share.
desktop.
And then you're saying share computer sound. I didn't have that checked.
Oh, correct. That's got to be it.
Okay. So let's try this again. All right. All right. That's me, and that's what I do, and I'm sticking to it.
That was great. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you put the painting process in there. I think that that's really, really great for everybody to see as well. Just kind of see that beginning stages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody have questions? Now's the time.
So like, where do you want to go from here on out? Like you've done a lot of stuff. Like what's the next step for you?
IP creation. So working on my own intellectual property. You see a lot of people doing it through Kickstarter now. It's a pretty popular thing where they say, well, check out my new art book, my new graphic novel thing that I've created. I would like to do something like that, but try to pitch it to an actual publisher to try to get it into stores all over the place. But right now, it's just about time, having the time to do it, while also balancing doing the stuff that I really enjoy doing. But yeah, that's, I mean, there are, every time you hit a goal, you have to have another one. You know, you can't just stagnate and say, all right, I've hit the pinnacle. This is it. Because at some point, and this happens for every illustrator, the art directors stop calling. And what ends up happening is whatever revenue you make, whatever income you pull in is going to come from collectors, from fans, from people that want private commissions and things like that. I see it happening like all the time. Or companies think that you're outside of their price range, so they don't ever bother to ask. There's that. So it's weird. It's a weird place to be. I hope that that doesn't happen to me for a very long time, where somebody's afraid to ask. But I would prefer to work on my own thing and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's really badass. I think that's actually pretty fitting for you. And I wish you like all the luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, I could totally see you being like great friends with a cosplayer with that mecha you made.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I go to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, or any Comic-Con, and I'll walk up to people that are really in really crazy costumes, and I'll just study it and say, okay, well, where are you in this? You know, like I want to know what it's all about. And I've embarrassed myself quite a few times just stopping what I'm doing and running up to somebody going, wait, I got to look at this. And I have no idea why I'm just like stopping them in the middle of a convention, a million people. But yeah, it happens. So how tall, somebody's asking about the musical mecha guy, how tall was the final product? The final thing I think was clocking in about 10 feet, 10 feet, something like that, from like tip to tip. Yeah. So like I have photos, people were high-fiving it, and from what I was told, they didn't fly me out to Vegas. Like why fly the guy that designed the thing to Vegas, right? But I heard that they had the speakers for this thing blasting Lil Jon, like turned down for what? Like Matt just blasting it, and had people like high-fiving it. So that made me happy that people liked it. So
Great.
yeah.
Anybody else? Questions?
I have another one if nobody else is. What kind of advice can you give somebody that's trying to like start out in drawing mechas and like trying to become, or not just become, but like draw a little more like mechanically, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Don't look at your favorite artists. Don't look at the guy or the girl or whoever it is that is designing mechs. Look to real world. Look to the real world. Look at Look at car engines, look at sports bikes, look at concept cars and industrial equipment. Take that stuff and collage it together and come up with interesting silhouettes based off of that. Real world designs, real world stuff. Because when you do that, you're going to have a solid understanding of how light hits that form and what kind of metallic surface you're dealing with, if it's chrome, brushed metal, fiberglass, whatever. And it's you want the robot to have your voice. You don't want people to look at it and go, oh, so you're a Shiro fan, huh? Oh God, why don't you just punch me in the face? So does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's
Okay.
a really great diving off point. I never even thought to consider that.
Yep. I don't bite, guys. I know you're nervous or might have questions, or you're all starting out or about to leave school and go off on your own journey. It's not going to be easy, but you if you persevere and keep doing what you love, you'll make it.
Hey, Eric, this is Mike. I have a class full of students here, and we have a couple of questions. So,
Great.
if you don't mind. Okay. Come on in.
I was gonna.
You wanna?
Okay. I wasn't sure where you wanted me.
Yeah, you have to.
But-
Sorry, the camera's a little. There we go.
Alright. So,
It's a little dark in here. Forgive us.
what for materials with sculpting? What would you recommend to make maquettes and stuff that you could use to reference? What would be a good material?
Well, I mean, it depends on, do you want to keep the maquette or do you want it to, all right, so I use Super Sculpey Firm or Super Sculpey Medium Gray because I like to be able to finalize the sculpt and then bake it in my oven so that it's like rock hard and then paint it or potentially paint it. So that's what I do for all of my maquettes. I've got a box of them sitting on the floor. We just moved, so I got a box sitting on the floor with all my little toys in it. But there's also NSP, Chavant NSP. It's non-sulfur, can't remember the plasticine clay. That stays hard as long as it is not exposed to heat. If it is exposed to heat, or if you leave that sculpture near a window in the summer, it will melt and there goes your sculpture. But if you keep it room temperature, it's good. And if you ever want to add to it, you can continually add to it and just use like a heat gun or a hair dryer or a toaster oven or something like that to heat up the clay. And once it cools down, it'll cool down to room temperature and it'll be solid. So there's two good options for you there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? And I was going to ask you if you could talk a little more about when you began your career in advertising. Did you work directly with ad agencies, or did you have an agent that found you worked with ad agencies?
I worked specifically for a third party. So I worked for a company called Animated Storyboards, and so it was a staff position. I was a staff digital illustrator. So that was my 9 to 5. I got up and traveled to New York City and put in my time every day working on the characters or the environments or whatever it is they wanted us to do. And we would be sent storyboards from Kellogg's or whatever the company was, and we would produce a full 30-second animatic in a week, something like that. And then the company, the advertising agency, was then able to show that to Kellogg's or to whoever whatever the product was, and they got to see whether or not their idea was good to go or whether they were going to scrap it entirely.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Just if you want.
Share for me?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh my God. What would you say advice-wise for people trying to break into the kind of studio industry when, like, nowadays a lot of it is like kind of sent off and there are fewer like American or at least East Coast companies to work for?
Are you talking about animation studios?
Film, yeah, everything really good.
And in what discipline though? Like, you want to be concept or animation, or like, what do you want to do for that?
I mean, that's not specifically like the field I'm looking into. I'm more just talking about like a lot of things are being kind of shipped off, and it's what would you say, like advice-wise, for kind of staying on the East Coast, looking for the smaller companies?
Well, there's a lot of visual effects companies that have branches in New York City. A lot of them do stuff for for advertising, but they also do work for do visual effects work for films as well. Trying to remember. Motion picture company, MPC. There's a bunch of them. I think you'd have to do a Google search on visual effects studios, and so, but your skill set would have to include not just drawing and painting, but an understanding of, you know, a lot of programs like After Effects and Premiere, or ZBrush, and all kinds of programs like that. There's, I can't remember some of the other ones, but it doesn't, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, from what I've seen, these days it doesn't matter where you live, because it's not even an East Coast, West Coast thing, because you are directly competing now with people in like Estonia, you know, that know the software. Because if you can work remotely, yeah, and you have high speed internet, we could be having this conversation like this, you know, you in a studio, just upload your file and send in your invoice. And then it's your choice, really, if you want to be on site. Or, I mean, if the company says after the pandemic is over, we need you to be on site, then it would be a decision you have to make on whether or not you want to relocate. You know, some people get all excited about relocating to California or Texas or wherever the job might be, but, you know, are you going to miss your family? Like, some people are good with just seeing their folks like twice a year, but that's a lot of, when you get to that point, then you could have that, then worry about that thought. But I wouldn't stress out too much about whether you should be on the East Coast or West Coast, because you're competing against everybody. I see people from Poland getting work for Marvel Studios, and I'm like, how in the, what, they're not even filming in Poland. How in the world did he get that job? So, but it happens. Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Yep.
Yes. We have one more. I don't want to, so sorry.
It's cool.
Oh, you're-
It's cool.
When you graduated college, what was like the first step that you took out the door, right? Like, for me, I can't speak for anybody else. For me personally, it gets a little scary when you think about, like, you're done, what the hell do I do next, right? So what was that like for you?
All right. So all right, you want the hardcore truth, or do you want me to like glaze over a couple of years?
I would hardcore truth.
Hardcore truth. All right, here it comes. All right. So there was a fine artist, a famous fine artist named Jeff Koons. And Jeff Koons had a studio in New York City in 2000. And the day after I graduated, I got a phone call from their creative director, and he wanted me to come in and show my portfolio for a position painting murals for Jeff Koons. So I had my first illustration job, my first painting job, the day after I graduated. Now, I was all, yay, what, making cash? I'm like, how much money do I need to pay rent? And I'm gonna move out of here and all that, get all excited. And then 6 months later, it was over. The job was done. We were painting murals for a guy that then turned around and sold each of those murals for like $1 million a piece. So then we realized, oh, we're getting paid, you know, less than $20 an hour to paint somebody else's stuff. It was a real punch in the face. But then I ended up not getting any real illustration work for like 2 years after that. I was working retail while trying to put my portfolio together. So when I found a staff position, I jumped at it. A staff position as an illustrator, I jumped at it. Now, in that 2 years, I spent my time working on my portfolio, learning how to paint digitally, because it wasn't a thing. Nobody in school ever told me you need to know Photoshop. It is an absolute must. I went back to school to learn 3D, 3ds Max, what they were calling it 3D Studio Max back then, and made sure that my portfolio was as bulletproof as I could possibly make it, so that if I saw a job ad, I could apply to it and know I could do it. You need storyboards? I could do it. You need a children's book? I can do it. I wasn't going to just say I am only capable of doing one thing and one thing only and hope for the best, because I needed to show my parents and to prove to myself that I did not just waste 4 years of my time and their money. So I hope that's the raw, that's raw. Now, there are other people that walked out of school and were immediately snatched up by DC Comics. You know, that's the James Jean story. James Jean was a year behind me and became like a rock star. Like, I can't compare myself to that. That's his path, right? That's a combination of excellent portfolio, right time, knowing the right people, and being in the right place. Everything came together, perfect combination. And that happens for people. That doesn't happen for everybody. Whether that's going to happen for you, I have no idea. I don't know what your portfolio is like. But if you know that there are things that you could include or programs that you could know to increase your likelihood of getting freelance or staff work, then do it. If you don't know ZBrush, learn it. All right, nobody cares whether you are sculpting in clay or nobody's going to ask you. Like, if you can prove that you can incorporate 3D into your workflow, ZBrush and Blender are the two big deals right now. More so, like when I came out of school, it was Maya and 3ds Max. You had to know it. Now it's Blender and ZBrush. So that's what I would tell you. After you get out of school, apply to what you know you want to do. Apply to the companies that do the kind of work that you want to do. And that's to every single one of you. If you see a job ad for an illustrator and all they do is like My Little Pony packaging art, and you have absolutely no interest in that, that's a decision you got to make. I'm not going to tell you not to apply, but that's a decision you got to make, because you could apply to it, relocate to Cincinnati or something, and hate life. That's just real. All right. But be paid, but be well paid. So that's that. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Else?
Thank you, Mike.
You guys, sorry. Just shoot.
No, that's perfect. Great questions. Great questions.
Yeah.
Anybody,
My students are really amazing.
You're a little biased, I think.
All right, I'm gonna mute now so I don't say anything stupid on mic.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Christy, we have one here.
Great, go ahead.
I'm also in class with my students, so
John.
yes,
John.
Eric.
John.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was going to say.
God. This guy taught me how to use the program.
How you doing, Eric? So Eric and I work together at Animated Storyboards, and our path is very similar. It was kind of a stepping stone for me where I learned to work digitally. I had no idea how to work digitally at the time. I was hired based on my drawing portfolio, learned Flash, and worked with Eric for a short amount of time. So good to see you again.
Nice to see you too, man. That's full
Congrats.
circle.
Yeah, congrats on all of your success. It's awesome to see your work. And
Thank
stuff.
you.
So yeah, we have real quick. We have a question here in my class.
Okay.
There you go.
So I will preface, if this question is slightly uncomfortable, you don't have to answer it. Have you seen in the industry, like what you've worked in, have you seen like any problems with like equality, whether it's dealing with topics like race or like sexuality? And if so, have you seen like pushes in the industry to get like improve upon it?
Can you say that last part again?
And if you've seen any like problems with like race or sexuality in the industry, have you seen industries taking steps to improve upon that, like to like ensure like safety for people of color, people of different sexualities?
Well, there is I can talk about the representation in sci-fi fantasy art or in just publishing in general. There is an annual or biannual survey done by Lee and Low Books, I believe, that tries to figure out what the percentage of children's books, what percentage of children's books are aimed at children of color versus books that are aimed at white kids. And it's like, 2% Latino, like 0.5% Native American, something like 40% of the children's books are all animal books, like with an animal protagonist, and 5% Black, whatever it is. But those numbers, those percentages keep increasing year after year, and they're making an effort. I'm seeing more of an effort in young adult, middle grade, and children's books to be more inclusive and to represent everybody that wants to buy or that is buying these products, because they want to speak to all of those audiences. And there's books aimed at biracial children, like, what am I? Who am I? What colors should I use when drawing myself? Things like that. I don't see that as much of an effort in adult sci-fi fantasy publishing, outside of maybe like Wizards of the Coast and a few others, but there really isn't a focused effort. I find. And I remember asking an art director back in college, in Donato's class, I remember asking, why is it that there are no depictions of Black people on the covers of your books? And like everybody else had questions lined up about, what do you want to see in a portfolio? How do I reach you? Can I send you my stuff and all that stuff? And I'm thinking, no, if I'm going to put together a portfolio for this career, I want to know if it's going to be a big deal if I paint a Black guy with a laser gun, with some kind of futuristic background. Is that going to turn you off? Or should I just paint white people having adventures? And It took 20 years. I know this for a fact. It took 20 years for that company to make an effort. 20. Okay. So I don't have any interest in working with them. Like, they made it clear that they're not willing to try. But there are others that are slowly making steps to say, oh yeah, we should be more inclusive because it would just open up more business for us. But you know, it's a slow moving thing. And when it comes to adding diversity into your portfolio, it used to be something that would scare me. I don't think you're going to have that problem now, but you know, 20 years ago, like if I tried to put any people of color in my portfolio, I had to worry about whether or not that was going to scare off a potential client. Like, would they work with me if I was showing them that I could paint more than just white people having adventures? And I don't mean that to make anybody feel uncomfortable or make it sound derogatory or anything like that. But if you look at the history of illustration from 1940s, 1930s to present day, there's only been a small amount of that time where you could go to a bookstore and see a person of color represented on the cover, like as the main character, not way off in the background of the image. You know, I've talked about this in other videos where, you know, there was a standing order by the Saturday Evening Post for Norman Rockwell to never paint Black people in his illustrations unless they were in a subservient role. You know, somebody actually said that to his face, right? So when you look at sci-fi fantasy illustration going all the way back to, you know, before Frazetta, you weren't seeing any people of color in those images unless they were getting stabbed or shot in the face, or you know, they were always used as, you know, cannon fodder. But you know, you know, I don't want to like drag this out, but like things have improved, and I think that if you were to make your portfolio more inclusive and show that you are capable of doing more than one thing, you're going to be all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions in here? Sure. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Eric. Eric, we'll have to touch base, man.
Yes,
Soon.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I had no idea you guys knew each other. It's such a small world. How about that?
It is.
That's very cool. Anybody else? It's 12:52, so we have a few more minutes for questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Because like you're doing like a lot of the same kind of like robot mech kind of stuff. How do you like get out of that burnout that you might go through, like when you just can't think of anything fresh or things that you haven't done before? Is there anything like specific you do or anything that you find gets you out of that kind of rut?
What do I do to like prevent artist burnout?
Yeah.
You know, and that's a long answer, but I think that the short answer would be I leave my studio and I try to go do something completely non-art related. I might play a video game, I might, you know, or just having some kind of outlet where you can there's still going to be a part of your brain that's still composing that illustration or still designing something. That's never going to stop. It's still going to be, those wheels are still going to be cranking in the back of your head. Even while you're sleeping, you might wake up and go, that's the answer. But if you give yourself time, you give another part of your brain time to relax, then everything can come into focus. And how long should you relax? It could be a couple hours, it could be a couple of days. But if you're on a deadline and you've hit that burnout stage, and you know you've hit that burnout stage, it's going to affect your work. It's going to affect the quality of your work, the type of compositions you come up with, the amount of effort that you put into the piece, all that stuff. So I really haven't hit any kind of burnout, real true burnout, because I really love what I do. And I don't mean to say like, well, you're only going to have burnout if you aren't enjoying yourself. That's not true either. But it's just taking time away from the studio. That's the short answer. Hope that's good.
No, I think that makes sense. Like that's why like having other hobbies kind of is it's helpful. Not just like your life doesn't always revolve all the way around art. Like having other hobbies is useful and helpful to take a break.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Anybody else?
Oh, there's the chat. There's stuff going on in the chat.
There's a lot of talking going on in the chat.
Oh my goodness.
I'll let you read through, and if you want to comment, go for it.
Oh, Yaya is saying I'm biracial and I really want to include all races in my illustrations. That's a big thing I want to accomplish in my career. Go for it, Yaya. Go for it.
And she is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like the first illustration I did for Wizards of the Coast, the art director, Zach, Chrissy, you know Zach. Zach knew I had a biracial daughter. He was like, let me call Eric up. I was like, oh my God,
that's great.
That's awesome. So I got to paint my daughter. So I had, collectors calling up and asking like, how much you want for it? He's selling. I'm like, no, that's my baby girl. That's going right on my wall. Get out of here. So Debbie's saying, thank you for such an amazing program. I saw a video on the panel you were on about race and sci-fi illustration. Oh, cool. I thought it was on your page. If you're able to share. The panel I was on about, you're talking about the Lightbox? Debbie, are you talking about the Lightbox Expo?
I actually have no idea. I was looking when we first announced that you were coming to campus. I looked up you and your work, and I thought it was a link on your website. It was a panel of like 5 or 6 people, and you were one of the lead speakers talking about particularly race and both the experience of people of color in the industry, but also the visual representation of people.
Oh, so that was either One Fantastic Week or Lightbox. We go a little bit more in depth with that in the Lightbox Expo panel, but if you guys are interested, I'm gonna plug my podcast while I'm here. So I have a podcast with 2 other illustrators. It's called Painted in Color. You could find it on YouTube. We air every 2 weeks. So we talk about not as much the technical aspects of being an illustrator, but more of the mental, emotional stuff that goes on in your heads, imposter syndrome, self-promotion. But we're not as much talking about being a self-employed fantasy artist or anything like that. We're just like illustrator's an illustrator, like what is your day-to-day like? And give us a follow. Like what do the kids say on YouTube? With the thumbs up or the likes, like
smash that motherfucking like button.
Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, right? That's what they say. So smash that subscribe. we got an episode airing tomorrow, 1 p.m. EST. It's going to be me, Mia Araujo, and Lauren Brown. Lauren is a design director, I believe that's her role, at a video game studio in Texas. And Mia is working on her own IP around Alice in Wonderland. So we just got a lot of attention because Neil Gaiman is following her on social media and promoted her Patreon. So all of a sudden she got some worldwide attention, and we wanted to just let you guys know, since you're just starting out or about to dive into this as a career, a potential career path, that there's a podcast out there with illustrators talking about the grind of doing this professionally. Okay, painted in color.
That is terrific. Thanks so much for letting us know about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is 12:59. I think all the chats were addressed. The only thing I would like to end with, Eric, is a quick question regarding personal versus client work. Do you fit in personal work? Why do you do it? How can you fit that into your schedule?
Oh my, why did you have to ask me that? I want to try to include personal work, but I juggle teaching and freelance stuff, and I'm just having so much fun doing both, that right now that I haven't had time to do the more personal pieces. But I need to make time this year. I'm trying to cut back on the amount of freelance stuff that I take on, and just make myself more available for magic cards, because that aftermarket is sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, and if I could, I just think I just want to be able to do a couple of those a year and then just sell them. I mean, that makes up for any loss in additional freelance work, and then I can take the time in between to do my own personal pieces. But here's the thing, and there's part of every illustrator's brain. There's part of every artist. It doesn't even need to be an illustrator. It's part of every artist's brain. And I was talking to my agent about this, that when somebody asks you to do a job, you still think that you're single and without kids, right? Like you got nothing else going on in your life, and you could just go, hot damn, yes, I've been waiting for this client. I'm so excited. I'm going to do this job. I'm going to bang it out. And then you go, with what time? Oh my, I'm going to have to be up till 2 a.m. Oh, you always forget. You always forget. Well, at least I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Like Disney says to me, or Scholastic says, like, hey, are you ready for that next cover? Are you available? And I go, yeah. Oh, like, what did I just do?
Yep.
You gotta make it happen, because I keep thinking back to the times when I was just stacking dog food in Walmart.
Oh yeah. Yep. No, I
nobody was asking me to do anything. So that's it. Hey, Yaya. How you doing?
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. It is 1:02. I'm going to let you go. I know you are very busy. You got a lot to do, so we really appreciate it. Thanks so much. And guys, everybody who joined us today, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And this recording will be available if you want to listen to it again and see the amazing work again. And be sure to listen to the podcast.
Christy, where do I go to find that recording then? Because I kind of came in a little late, so.
Yeah, so it's going to take a little while to render, but I will send that out to the PCA community as soon as it's available.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Eric.
Thank you guys for having me. And if anybody has any additional questions, I know some people don't want to speak out during a thing like this, but I've done these in the past, and I am totally cool with people messaging me through Instagram. You got to smash that follow button first, though. Smash it. All right. Just reach out. I just say like, hey, You came to speak at our school. I just have a question for you, if you don't mind, blah, 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 whatever. And I'll get back to you. All right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
So you guys have a good day, and I will talk to you later, Christina. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
This is great. Thanks so much. We really appreciate
Bye.
it. Bye.